right, let's get straight into our leading story. The 8th ANC elective conference in eThekwini has been delayed up until 9 o'clock this morning after bickering factions failed to agree on whether regional task team members could vote or not. Our reporter Nkosikhona Duma is at the conference and joins us now live. Nkosikhona, very good morning to you. Just give us details around what happened since we last crossed to you just before 10 p.m. last night. Some interesting developments.
You're absolutely correct, Simpo. So the ANC elective conference here in eThekwini has been delayed up until 9. And this is, of course, because, as you correctly allude, the members, the bickering factions here could not agree whether or not members of the regional task team should vote in this particular elective conference. I'm just going to try and explain this very easily, because I think most people who aren't aware of ANC processes will not be as easily clear. So the ANC in eThekwini had a leadership whose term expired in 2018. That particular leadership was led by Zandile Gumede. Since 2019, the ANC in eThekwini has been under the leadership of the regional task team. Now, when that task team was formulated, the ANC tried to ensure that in the 30-member regional task team, that's half comprised of a faction that was supporting Zandile Gumede, and another half was a faction that was supporting Thabani Nyawo, because those were two dominant factions that emerged and showed an interest to lead eThekwini. Now, it was expected that a regional conference will take place, but it hasn't been able to take place up until this particular weekend. Well, the factions, both factions came to this conference highly energized, both believing that they had a high chance. But, after we crossed last night at about just before 10 p.m., we heard from sources inside that Thabani Nyawo's supporters, the number of his supporters was actually diminishing, or was little compared to the number of supporters that were going to vote for Zandile Gumede. And so his faction started asking that members of the regional task team must be allowed to vote. Now, the faction belonging to the faction supporting Zandile Gumede disagreed to this. They highlighted that at least 3 of their members on the task team are affected by the ANC step-aside resolution. They also highlighted that some of the people who form part of the regional task team are not from eThekwini. They said that this will unfairly put Thabani Nyawo in an advantageous position, and Zandile Gumede will be prejudiced. They went on to bicker for about 6 hours up until the early hours of this morning, when it was decided that they should actually these proceedings should be postponed for a few hours up until 9 a.m. this morning. But I would like you to just listen to a conversation we heard with the spokesperson for Zandile Gumede's campaign, Nkosikhona, who spoke to us just over an hour ago.
This conference was collapsed by the NEC a few minutes ago. And the reasons they collapsed this conference is because the side that is supporting Thabani Nyawo was asking that the RTT should vote in this conference. Now, in all the conferences that have been sitting in this province of KZN, and including the one that sat last night of Herikwala, the RTTs have not been given voting rights. So they were here on an observer status. But in this particular conference, those people who are supporting Comrade Thabani Nyawo and that collective were trying to force this conference to deviate from the norm which this province adopted, that RTTs are not going to vote. When that didn't happen, they did everything in their power to collapse this conference. Now, earlier, before that, they were circulating a message on WhatsApp that any and everything should be done to collapse this conference.
Well, Well, the ANC in the ANC spokesperson in KwaZulu-Natal, Nkosikhona Duma, is of the view that the conference will be able to continue. Let us just listen to what he had to say about these overnight developments.
Key amongst the challenges were around the credentials. More than anything on the credential was the status of the regional task team. Some of the delegates felt that the regional task team should have a right to vote. And they also were outlining that the Women's League as a structure has long expired, so it should not be having voting status. So those were the issues which were a point of contention among the delegates. We took us for about 5 or 6 hours without conclusion. Hence we ended up agreeing that no, let us adjourn for the day. We'll then convene tomorrow morning, having consulted with the leadership of the province officials and the national officials, because part of the presupposition is that in other provinces outside of KZN, the RTTs have voting powers. So why is it in the KZN that you don't have such?
Well, there you have it. Nkosikhona Duma elaborating that in other provinces outside KwaZulu-Natal, members of task teams have been allowed to vote in regional conferences, but in KwaZulu-Natal, the argument that was made by the supporters of Zandile Gumede is that this hasn't actually happened, and it will be unfair to them. In fact, it will just make this conference lawless, according to them, and prejudicial to particularly the faction of Zandile Gumede. What they proposed was that, well, if members of the RTT are allowed to vote, then those who form part of the RTT, as well as who are sent as delegates here, should actually be replaced by other members, so that their numbers are actually added up. So that was another issue that both these the other faction belonging, the supporting, the endorsing Sabaninyao could not agree with. So the way going forward now is that the ANC leadership in the province, led by its chairperson Sihle Zikalara, as well as the National Executive Committee of the ANC, is going to be consulted on this matter. But from what we've sensed is that there's still an appetite, at least from the side that's supporting Zandile Gumede, to proceed with this conference, because they believe that they have greater chances of winning the conference, and they realize this after the verification process was done last night. You recall that there was a pause late last night where people were asked to leave this particular room because there was suspicion of bogus delegates, and after that process was concluded, that is when the supporters of Zandile Gumede actually gained confidence, believing that they will take this particular conference. But at this particular moment, of course, the other side, if you speak to them, they will say that they still have a chance themselves. So it is a story that we are going to be keeping on throughout the day.
Absolutely. The stakes are certainly high in Nkosikhona, as of course we also know that this conference has experienced a series of delays. When it comes to the manner in which it's being handled by delegates, what are you seeing? I mean, is there a chance that all hell will break loose and chaos will unfold?
Well, yeah, it certainly hasn't been uneasy. In fact, when we were called in, because we were called in by the faction supporting Zandile Gumede, as we made our way inside this particular venue, supporters of Sabaninyao were actually going out. We could sense, they didn't want us to come here. In fact, some people were pulling us by our clothing, asking, what are we doing there? The stakes are certainly high. Both sides want to win this. Of course, being a leader of the ANC in eThekwini is quite crucial. Many have said that this particular conference will set the tone for the upcoming provincial elective conference, as well as the national elective conference of the ANC, which is expected to take place in July. We know that those who have previously won the leadership of eThekwini of the ANC in eThekwini have gone on to be great influential players in the eThekwini municipality, which has a budget of about 50 billion rand, one of the country's most influential metros, and so it is quite a significant, metro for people to govern. And it's quite clear that the ANC is still interested in it, because while they now have about 42% of the votes in eThekwini, they still hold the position of mayor, and they have been able to do this because they managed to secure a coalition with a minority party, the Batu Congress, and they're hoping to hang on to that. But also, the stakes are quite high. Many people around this conference, when you talk to them, are saying that the people who are interested in this particular conference are not just delegates from eThekwini, are people from other provinces and other places where the ANC is present, because they feel that it will set the tone about their chances of emerging, in the upcoming elective conferences.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there for now. Nkosikhona Duma, of course, this is a developing story that we will continue to keep you up to speed with our reporter out in KwaZulu-Natal. Now,